Okay, in here I'm going to demonstrate a little bit you about authentication and authorization, the security-based things and how to implement these things, right? And the issues as well. So authentication and authorization are the two sides of whether the user access whether the user can access the system or the permission based, right? Simply. So but it has two ideas. The authentication is the first one. It determines whether the user is permitted to access the system, right? Normally using the username, passwords, or the fingerprint, these kind of things using specific cards, right, with the chips. These things you can use to biometrics as well. These things you can use to check whether the user who are trying to access the system is the permitted user, right? That is authentication, right? Then after that, it's not enough. Then after accessing, let's say the authentication is passed, right? Which means yeah, user is permitted. After that, it's not enough. Then you need to check when your user access or navigate some section. You need to check whether the user, the authenticated user, right, is permitted to access that specific path. That is called authorization. Right? That is kind of extension to the authentication. Right? For a proper system, you need to handle both sides. The first one is I will show how to handle authentication and then the authorization. Right? The normal way, as I mentioned, is username and password. Right. The first thing is you have to a mechanism to register your username users using username and password. Here, as I couple of times I think I mentioned you, that is the in normal case the username is a public key, right? Which means the it's can see from anyone, right? And but it's unique. It's to identify whether the users exist or not, right? Right? Then the other key, the password, it's don't need to unique one but private one, right? So these kind of things. So in here in my database I normally use email address because we need unique one to distinguish the users, right? You can use NIC in sometimes in unique employee ID, right? Or the email simply, right? So I have used email address, and this is the password. So we need to keep the password as encrypted code, which means it's totally secure. Not only the hackers or the third parties, even the admin can't see that password. That is the my security level I have provided, because this password generated and sent to the users when it creates. So, which means the admin even doesn't know what the password is. If it meets, what your admin can do is just reset the password, right? And then for the authorization, I have used user role-based authorization, right? First, I will show you how to create this part, how to create an encrypted password, and how to do this one, right? Okay, first I will log into the system, right? And let's go and check a little bit interface here. Right, I think I have done some basic levels these things, and then username I have checked for the uniqueness, right? Using Ajax, right? So these things. Let's go and check a little bit. What's the code? in here, it involves two controllers, right? The first one is the users to manage users, which for the add users, and other is at first. I'm not going to explain everything. And home is to sign in and sign out process, right? So here in users, simply this loads the normal view, right? So let's go and check the view a little bit. We need to check actually to show you the uh, HX part. Right? Here, the views under the admin. This is the view, right? Here I have added the JavaScript as the internal file. I think it's a little bit comfortable for you to examine. Uh, then, when clicking the button, uh, the submit button, it invokes this function, validate add user, and here you can see validated user. Don't forget to use the return, and then the action to where you need to send the data if it's valid, right? And here I haven't done the fully server side. I use Ajax to manage, right? Because this is internal screen and little bit complicated to handle the server side validation coordinator for. However, these are the things the first, because I have the form validation JavaScript that is the common rules. It has the common rules. Let's go and a little bit check that one as well. Until the public folder here, the JavaScript, right? And this one. Yeah, the functionality is empty. Just check whether it trims first and check whether the length is zero or not, to check whether you have entered something or, because it avoids the spaces, right? That is why I have trim. So whenever you need to check the required, you need to first trim the string. Otherwise, if you use enter just spaces, then it will pass, because spaces are still the characters, non-printable characters. So to avoid this, you need to use trim just before the check the length or something else. Trim means it removes all the spaces before and after the text, right? And then it has is email, regular expression. I explained it a bit previously, right? These things, right? Okay, so let's go here. Uh, Here it checks whether it's required or not, right? And then check whether it's an email address, right? Then if it's okay, which means you have entered an email address, and then it's in valid format, then it checks whether it's existing or not using Ajax, right? Here the functions, and it sends a user email, and this is the URL. In Ajax you should have a specific function to invoke from the server side, right? So this is the place users email is exist function. This one here. It's kind of these functions. Here, this is the function. It's very simple. Just query the database using the email address and count how many record it's available, right? Which means with your email address, it has one record, which means one or more records, which means not at least you can't have more than one record, 1 or 0, otherwise not unique. No, so if you have one record, the count is 1, then it will means you have an email address existing, and otherwise it's zero, which means it's unique. It's okay. So and also I have extended the function to avoid the current record, because in your edit user function you are allowed to change the email address, but in such case uh, you can keep your own email address, right? So in that case, when you check your email address, you need to omit, you skip your current record, right? When these are the different stories, right? The first, when you add a new user, then you can check the entire email list, right? But when you edit that user, you need to skip that existing record and you need to check with the other, right? Here, here's the database record, right? At the moment, it has two records, right? So when a new user add, right? Let's say the first time I'm going to add my one, then it shouldn't exist within the current table. But what happened when I edit my one, right? In such case, I need to skip my record and check the other records, right? Because if I check my record, it's normal, right? So that is why I have extended this one. So when you need to add this function, use for both cases, right? First, when you add a new one, you can go with this setting, excluding the current false, which means it will check everything. Here, it haven't added this one, right? But when you need to check for the editing purpose, then you can exclude the on record by mentioning this one as true value with the user ID, right? Then it will, from this line, this extended one, it will skip that one by implementing the user ID pk not equal to this, right? Not equal to this one means skip that user ID. Specific trick. That is, these are the things I mentioned you, the programming techniques. You can't cover these things by referring the PHP basics. These are the techniques, right? This to get experience these things, you need to work with project and collaborate with other the experienced one, and you have to refer to the tutorials and real implementation YouTube videos, these things. This will not, you can find these things using the basics, the PHP basics videos, these things, right? Okay, the additional thing, right? Then, however, here in Ajax, it will check these things, and if it's provide the value, then it says already exists, otherwise it will pass. So this kind of the validation, and then you can see it passes the details to via my add user function, this one. So let's close this one. This is edit, and yes, this function, right? So the first thing I need to do is create a password, right? This is the function, specific function I have, because the decision whether you need to put the code here or to define another function based on whether you need to reuse this, right? For example, in here, to generate password, you need this to use in password reset. So the same task, the generated password, you need to have here and another place, which means better to have a separate function, because in that case you can use that function without rewriting the same code, copy and paste it, right? You may think that the copy and paste okay, but the thing is, if you made the same repetition codes, if you need to change somewhere, some parts you need to check and change every part. But in here, you need to change only that specific function. Okay, so let's go and check the generate password function. Let's close this one here. It has the string and length. Again, a simple technique, programming technique, right? What I have done is just get the 10 characters from here. First, I shuffle here the entire string, right? Then this is a string shuffle function, right? It will shuffle the entire string, right? To make some random. And then I have substring, that is to cut and get a specific part of your string. You can use substring to get specific part of your existing given string. This one is the first index you need to start from, and then the length, right? Note that the strings considered as a character array, right? So the first character means the zero index. So if you need to take from the first character, you need to specify zero. Let's say you need to start from the 10th character, which means your index should be 11, right? And then the length, how many characters? 10, like that, right? So note that I also define these things as variables, because for your preferability, I have defined here, but normally I define these things is on I move these things on config, because these are the configuration things, not from within function. Then I can use I can get that value using the configuration. But in here, to make a little bit simple, I have added these things in here, right? Another technique, right? And then this is my main string, because I need to send both part, right? Not only the encrypted one. Why? The reason is I need to, after sending this part, I need to send the real password to the recipient or my new user, and then the encrypted part to save the database, right? That is why I have used two parts. The password is an array. You can see it sends return the array, and a string element, a string key has the original password and then encrypted, right? The password hash I have used, right? And the string. Okay, so that is the way, right? It will pass the original password and encrypted part to my main function. Then the process is very simple. After getting the password, I have prepared the data set, user email, I have get and the user role. All right, and then the data set I have prepared here. This is for the database, right? So these are the value I need to pass to the database, right? And I don't need to send the default values on the database, because in database you can see I have defined user role. Here's the structure. I have defined the user status as default value as the true, right? So I don't need to pass this one. Also, I have defined the user role as doctor, the default one, because I guess it has a lot of doctors to register the system. But in here, I'm going to allow the user to check, the admin to check, change the user role, right? That's why I have passed that one, the value here explicitly, right? However, you can define you can keep your default use your default fields as you wish, because it avoids a number of specifications when you create this kind of data set passed to your database, right? Can avoid the default value if it's the same. Otherwise, you can provide the different value. And then the transaction start. In fact, in here, because I have only one database interaction, I don't need a transaction to block this thing as a transaction, but to keep consistency with the other section and to show you this one, I have blocked that one. It's not a big impact here, right? Because that's only one, the very same. Otherwise, you can just get the value and you can use that value to check the status, right? an entry I have used. You can find that model, and you can check this function there. It needs your table name and dataset, right? This function implements the real coordinator function, core builder functions, right? Then if it's okay, you can get the transaction status here. Then you need to send an email, not that order, right? After placing the user successfully to the database, then you need to send an email, right? That is why we say in your algorithms, not only the steps, but also the order of steps is very important. Let's say you first send an email, then try to put the user to the database. What will happen? If you miss the most important part, the database, then the user will receive an email, the account is created, but in a real database, it has no any count. So it's always very important. And then to address user email, these things I have defined to use send email function. In here, it has send email function, right? Another function, because most case I need to send email in user under the user controller. In reactivate user, cancel user, reset person, I think almost all the places I have sent an email here. So in that case, I have defined a simple send email function here, because with the data set change according to the scenario, the functions, which means the email address and the subject line and the body section, right? In most cases, others are the very same, right? Then again, in real scenario, I used these things. I keep these things in configuration file, not under the functions, because if you are the configuration is, though the configuration is for the system admin, it's not a good practice to allow this kind of configuration come and edit in the function, because if any mistakes done, it will malfunction the entire function, right? So it's better to keep this kind of configuration with config file. Another best practices and programming technique. However, it sends an email, right? So then after completing these things, I have written this one to the log, right? This is another function I have defined in app model. You can check. It needs this kind of a simple one, and then the notification is sent, right? So that is the end user scenario, right? I have prepared the password, encrypted them, and stored the database and send an email. That is add use, right? Then user login part, right? That is authentication. What we need, it has a couple of things we need. The first you need to, that is the function. Let's go and check, right? This function, sign-in function, right? You need to check a couple of things. The first one is whether the users exist, right? Not only they exist, but also you need to check whether the user is active, right? In the authentication process, right? This is authentication process, whether the use is permitted. You check whether your use is permitted. First, you need to check whether the user exists. Then it's active, right? Then also after that, whether the password is correct or not. Then you can, if it's almost all the things okay, then you can decide this user is authenticated one, not the authorization part, right? Here, what I have done is just trim the values, username and password, because to avoid users just space typing. And then I simply, without checking whether it's empty or not, right, I just send the user details to here, the username, in fact, email address, right? Get user. function, right? In app model, let's go and check a little bit. App model, that's onto the model, right here. Get user function. It has common functions plus specific function. Here, get user, right? You can see what I get the main the details I need, the user ID, user password, status, role, everything. And here the email, not only the email, I have checked whether the user status is true or false. Which means what will happen? It will send user details to this variable only if the username is correct, that is your email address, and not only the email address, but also the user status is true. Which means if your user is okay, but the user status is false, it will not send any data to user, right? It send an empty array, right? Then by checking the status of the variable, whether it has an array or empty, then you can decide the user is existing or not. Here what I have done. Here I have checked the status of the variable. If you are a variable, because the true false evaluation in PHP is in also the other language as well. It doesn't need only true false, direct true false. In some other cases, it evaluates as true false. For example, in false, the numeric value is 0 and empty array, empty string. These are also considered as a false type. That is what I have used. Again, another programming technique, right? I just have checked whether the variable status. If there is no value, it will become false. I don't need to check the false, true, false. In fact, it's not false because at the moment the user's value is not false. The value is not false, right? It's empty, right? The emptiness will evaluate as a false. And then, if it has something, then I have checked whether the password is correct. This is password verify functions. PHP 8 new function to verify the password. You have to send two values. The first one is the encrypted, the user sent one, the original password, the text one, and then the encrypted one. Then you can get whether it's true or false. Very simple. Here again, I have used and. Why? This is we call kind of short circuit, because in here, to make an evaluation true, you need to have almost all the components should be true. So in that case, the programmer checks first this one. If it falls, the programmer will not check the other parts. Why? It doesn't need, because we have used AND. If first part is false, which means though this part is correct, true, the entire segment becomes false. Another programming technique. This is very important because let's assume you have changed this order. First, you are going to check this one and then the user. It will make an error if there is no user. Why? If there is no user, this will be an empty array, which means there is no this kind of key elements. So if you check this part first, if there is no user, it will end with an error message. You are going to access non-defined array key. Right? You can avoid that one by changing order. Another programming technique. Right? If it's okay, which means you have something in user, which means the user is available that with that email address and user is active, that means user is okay and then password is correct. Then you can go ahead. Set session for the user to make sign in true and user ID and user roles as well. right? Because in here, these are the things I need to manage for the authorization and authentications as well. Because after that, the user may go the separate sections and do something more, right? In each cases, I need to check the authentication and authorization as well. It's not only for here, for in this space. I also need to check from every when you use just anything, you need to check these things separately. Right? But instead, you don't ask you can't ask the user to enter the password and username again and again. You need to keep this status, right? So in HTML, this is totally we call normally stateless, right? Which means after doing these things, server totally ignore these things. So you have to keep this status throughout the entire session until your user log out, right? So that is the way you can. This is one way. In here, I use totally session based, cookie based system, right? Even you can another way. So this is when we compare. This is the easiest way. There is another way to keep these session details on a table. Right? It's a little bit more secure, but it's a bit hard to manage. But it's available in coordinate if you need to handle that one. In such case, it will not send these details, session details within the cookie. Instead, it will save these details in the database, right? And it takes some performance, because and every time it needs check, go and check the database, right? It will handle by coordinate, but it had some performance, right? But safe because the details are there. But in here, details sends to the browser because cookies stays in your browser. So if some hacker can change these cookie details as well, it has a little bit risk, right? However, I use the default things, these things, and then right block, and then if the user role is this one, admin, it will redirect to this section, users, that is users index uh, screen, that is the displaying the users, and otherwise it will redirect to home. It will not work. Right? That's a default. If the entire session is failed, again it redirect to the home screen to log in again. That is the normal authentication process, and it's very simple. The sign out process, when sign out, it will totally destroy the session and redirect to again the login screen. Before these things, it will write log the user has been signed out. Right? So these are the sign in and sign out process. Right? So this is the main authentication. Right? First authentication. Right? It's involves just to check the user and put the status to the session. That's all. Then after that, when you need to allow the user something, let's say add or something, this I haven't defined a thing. Yes, here, right? So now use is okay, but then net like that, right? Let's sign out. Is the process now? Okay, now I have successfully logged in, and then I was allowed to handle this one. Now it's okay. But then let's say I'm going to add a new user. Before this, the system should check whether I have been allowed to do this step. That is the authorization. So in here, as mentioned before, I have used normal session-based authorization. How to implement that is using this function, right? Is user admin, right? And here I assume almost all these function in this controller allowed to the user or admin, right? In here, I need to check not only the authentication, but also the authorization, the extended part, right? So that is why I have sent that value admin. Let's say this is the section you allow to doctor, then you can define as a doctor, right? Based on this function, ablib function. So I have defined as a application library function because why? I need to check it again and again, right? Here the function is very simple. It just check the session value you have added previously. Let's go here. Is user. It gets the user role because I have planned this as a single user role system, which means any user has only one single user role. There is no multiple user roles, right? And then here, first I have checked whether it's the value of signing. That is the authentication to check the user is permitted. Then I have checked the user role, whether the current user role is the given one. Right? If it's okay, would be okay. There is nothing to do. If it's okay, right? Nothing to do, and that can, which means it will continue to the specific function. Otherwise, what will happen? It will redirect to the home, right? So that is the mechanism of actually in here the authentication plus authorization, right? How to implement that, right? Why I have done? Why I have added this part to the constructor? Because as I mentioned in my design here, I have assumed almost all the users related management related functions under this controller or the class has the same uh, authorization access control. Normally we call access control as a authorization is common word, and implementation we call access control as right for the admin. So in such case, I can simply add this function to the constructor. Why? When someone calls any of this function, the constructor will invoke just before that one. Let's say you have the different user role, which means let's say you are allowed to you are going to allow the add user for the super admin and the other functions to the admin. In such case, you have to move this function to this separate function and check separately, right? For this add and add user, not only that, but also the add user you need to check, right? Not only, in fact, though you haven't checked the authentication for the loading form, you need to definitely check that one for the processing, right? And because hackers can send these are the requests, no? Hacker can send the request without a form, right? They can prepare the request manually and then send. Manually means a software based, right? But they can send because that's a structure, right? What when you define a form, it will get the data and browser set up that response from by the browser itself. You don't need to prepare that one. But if you are a hacker, without the form, you can prepare that request and send through the browser or another software. It will work. So it's very important to check the authentication and authorization also in processing part. This processes because for the server, these are almost all the requests sent to the server. It doesn't matter whether it sends a form or process something. Okay, so in such case, you have to define your super admin check-in for this function, and you need to add admin check-in for other functions. Right? It's a little bit not complicated, but a little bit it's more than it's a little bit simpler if you can use this kind of. That is why I have instruct the students by default. Try when you design your system, try module-based access for the user, which means if you have a user management module, try your best to manage that one for the single specific user. In such kind, you can manage this way. right? You can get another security measurement. For example, the other user interface part is because let's say this is doctor's interface. You can just hide these options from doctor's screen, but it's not enough. Why? Though you have hide this part, the URL is available, no? Right? Let's say doctor needs not happen, but let's assume one of the person who has the doctor roles need to hack or create, then they can simply type the URL here and access. If you haven't defined this kind of authentication authorization, this will allow. So sometimes someone thinks that it would be enough to hide this part from the screen. It will not. It will add additional one. It's kind of a user friendliness part, right? Because it's not nice to show something as these kind of functions to the user, and then user try to access, then says no, it's not allowed for you, and it's not allowed for, it's just redirect to the home page. It will not nice, right? Then user may thinks, why, if I am not permitted, why it shows me, right? Just right. So the hiding not permitted parts is additional user friendliness, but the real mechanism you need to manage this. But in session based, it has an issue, right? It will not affect your database change. Let's say like this. I will show here. You now you know I have login as an admin. So my user role is admin, right? Now you know this part will not allowed for the doctors. So let's change this user role to doctor. This is simply like while you are logging your system and working with your system as admin, another admin change this user role to doctor, right? This can happen because this is a distributed system. You are in somewhere and your admin, the other admin may be another place, right? So let's check what will happen. Now your role is doctor, right? Its effect to the database, right? It has changed the value in database, right? Let's check here. It will not change, but in normal case, it should change to the doctor. What's the reason? Reason is, as I mentioned, this is here. I have used cookie and session, not the database based session. This is cookie based. So here you can see the session value. Here is sign is okay. Here the user role is still in admin. This will change the user's next login part. Right? So let's try the sign out. Right? Now I'm going to sign in again. Now it will affect. It's add admin. Now now keep in mind my user role is now one, the doctor. Here what will happen? Again it roll back. Actually, it redirect. No, why? This redirection is not. I'm not a invalid user. This happens because it after the correct after the valid login, because I haven't changed the status or the password anything. It's okay, which means I'm authenticated users, right? But why it's redirect? The reason of this one. Why? After here, right? It checks the user role. This is, and actually in here what happened is goes the default one. However, it will not allow, now it will not allow to access the other part here. Even I tried to use this, it will not. Because I'm a doctor here. Let's check. Here, doctor. So this is the only disadvantage if you use this kind of session, because the session update the role only when you're when you log in, right? Even you can manage that, because I haven't got that deep. You can manage. What you need to do is, if this is this is the editing part, right? So I will change this here. I will show. Yes, this is editing part. After login, now I'm going to edit. When you change the user over, what you can do? Here, here's the edit function. This function. When you change the user over, what you can do? You can easily, yeah, you can't change the session value in fact, because it changes your value, your own value. You can't change the others' value, right? So you can, yes, if you need this kind of implementation, you need to extend it a little bit to check, go and check the database authentication again and again without depends on the sessions stored values. So that's the thing. But I think you don't need such kind of validation for the internal team, because we are not thinking they will hack the system as well. So, however, this is the way of authentication and authorization, right? So I show you, you need to encrypt password and authentication authorization, the different things, right? You need to, in first login, you need to just check the authentication. After that, you need to check not only authentication, but also authorization, whether it's allowed to access that specific functions and tasks, how to implement these things, and the session-based, the cookie-based method, and the advantages and disadvantages, especially in this mechanism. If the user all change, or even the user cancelled, it will affect only from the next login, not the immediate impact, right? If you need an immediate impact, rather than checking the session value, you have to implement the full check-in again and again as a first time, first login. If you remember the first login, you have go the date, can take the date and check. No, the same thing, same way you have to check again and again. So as I mentioned, as usually mentioned, the security is balanced. So you can decide whether it's need or not, and you can balance your security. In most cases, it will be okay, because your system is not extra sensitive system like financial kind of things, right? So I think it will clear, and that's about the authentication authorization.